Hey, Lily. Welcome back, guys, to my YouTube channel. This is Conversations with Lumi, and I'm excited to be back here after what maybe 1 month of not shooting on YouTube. I think it's been amazing for me having to collaborate with some of my friends from Nigeria, and I had Dr. Ada on a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about waiting for long seasons, and then I had my friend Ewa, and then we spoke about heartbreaking friendship, and it's been amazing. The feedback I've gotten so far has been mind-blowing. If you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, honestly, I don't know what you're doing. So right now, just tap on the button, subscribe right now, share with someone, like this video, drop a comment if you enjoyed listening to this episode, and obviously share with someone. Spread the word around. I just want to say thank you guys for the support so far. It's been amazing, and I'm excited to be back here shooting this content. I would say doing this actually takes a lot than I thought. But like every other thing, it takes discipline and commitment. So today's topic is something I've been excited about. Just the thought of it has really gotten me excited. I think the fact that I go through stuff in life and I'm able to share with my friends and people around encourages me. So I'm going to be talking about how I failed my driver's license exam 3 times before actually getting the permanent license. Let me just give a prefix. First of all, I generally don't do well with failure. I wouldn't expect anyone to be comfortable with failure, but I grew up wanting to be the first in the class, having A's and A's and B's and being the first. Basically, I think it had to do a lot with how my parents brought me up. My dad was definitely very keen about excellence, including academic excellence. So there's a whole lot of childhood story I could tell. I remember one time my dad was like, you go about helping people with explaining and helping them with their assignment and all of that. You have to make sure you're doing your stuff first. While I was doing good in class, I was also very helpful in helping people with their assignments as a kid, back in primary school and maybe secondary school, high school. So anyway, the idea of maybe it's because I'm also African. I would think a whole lot of African parents definitely want their children to be the first in the class. Have you ever had your mom tell you or your dad tell you like, oh, the person with the first position, do they have 2 heads or do they have 3? I'm like, so just to avoid all of those comments, I made sure I was on top of my game. I remember one time I came second, the second position in class. I was in the top, graduate for that particular class, and I heard everything at home. My dad definitely encourages. My parents encourage doing well and all of that. But this time, I think this was the problem. I think before that, I had just gotten a new phone, so it definitely got into my head, and I didn't do as well as I would do without when I didn't have the phone. So I guess I'm taking responsibility for that also. Another time, we had this school excursion to a swimming pool. It was my first time at the swimming pool, and then the teachers decided that after the swimming pool and the fun, they were going to give us our report cards. And then imagine my shock after having fun and then realizing I'm going to go back home with a report card that is not first position. So it is what it is. So anyway, I grew up being competitive academically. I also think that, I mean, I could have been smart for, the environment I was, but maybe not as smart if I grew up in a different country or a different community. But still, I think the whole spirit of competition and, putting my best into my work was quite helpful for me. It also has its perks, because this is the thing. Academic smartness is not the same as street smartness or business smartness or being smart in life, and all of that. And that's something that I'm trying to put a balance to even right now, because I know better that it's not about those who have the first class or those who come up with the perfect CGPA, but rather about those who take opportunities. And like one of like Pastor Apostle Emmanuel will say, when you graduate with your first class, it shows that you do have discipline to study and then get the grades. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are you're good at everything to make it in life or to be successful in life. So that's something I'm still trying to put a balance to. I'm definitely not encouraging failure, but at least I'm going to talk about how I didn't pass my driver's license 3 times in the United States, and then I got it on the 4th attempt. And before I get into that, I'm just gonna give a short story about my university days. All right, so with the same spirit, I know getting into med school and studying physiology wasn't as easy as I thought. So I had to get comfortable with the idea of getting B's, because we had anatomy and I had A's in some, but I had B's in some. Trust me, it was really hard. So the fact that I had a B was quite commendable. I know there are people that actually had straight A's, but at least I was on top of, at least I was in the first class. I had a CGPA of about 4.5. So something happened in my 3rd year. All right, I was taking pharmacology, and I definitely knew that this course was a pain in the head, because it was, the concept were hard to conceptualize, and we weren't also paying attention as we ought, because we believe the teacher wasn't as interesting or engaging as the other lecturers. So we wrote exam, and from the exam I knew that I wasn't prepared. Okay. So the idea of failing many times, even as a Christian, because this is where I feel like many of us try to guilt trip God or blackmail God, is that we do poorly in our preparation for an exam or for something, and then while at the face of that test or that exam, we realize that, oh boy, I definitely need saving, and then we try to turn to the grace of God, and we try to turn to angelic help, especially when we've not done the barest minimum or the prerequisite, the work required for that excellence or for that award. So it's something like we do have to learn that, okay, God rewards labor, and many times he's not going to bypass your laziness in order to give you an excellent reward. So it's something like, okay, so when I wrote the exam and the results came out, I had a D. I had a D. It was devastating, because I have never had a D. Fortunately for me, for my department, a D was a pass. If it was less than that, I was gonna have to take the course again. Eventually, I think it was curved to a C. So I eventually had C on my school transcript. Pharmacology. I think it was 301. It was about pharmacodynamics and all of that, pharmacokinetics and all of those things. So one thing I actually did after that experience was, knowing that affected my CGPA, I decided to work harder at studying for the next semester, because I took 3 pharmacology courses the semester where I had the C. I had 2 A's in the other pharmacology courses and 1 C. So the next one, it was a 4 credit hour course, and I knew that, okay, if I am going to get any chance at getting back on the first class with a CGPA of 4.5 or above, I need to get an A in this class, which had both a lab and a class. So, I put in the work. I was reading and studying and trying to memorize the mechanism of action, MOA of every drug, the class 1, class 2, class 3 of antihypertensive and, treatment for congestive heart failure and all of those things basically. And I remember the day the results came. I think I had this. Now in Nigeria, an A is not 90. I know in the United States an A could be 90% or 93%, but in Nigeria an A is actually 70%. And you might think that's easy to get, but trust me, folks, it is not. So imagine the struggle to get to an A, and when it's just 70%. But yeah, it's really a struggle to get to an A. So I think I was in Bible study. I remember that day I was in Bible study because I served as the Bible study secretary at the time, and we were about having our meeting. And then I looked up in the class WhatsApp group, and I saw they had posted the screenshot of our results. And then scrolling to my name, I had a 71, I believe, or maybe a 70. I was like, oh, thank God. It felt so rewarding. Why? Because I put in the work, and I prayed through it, believed for it, but also put in the work, not just deciding to cast off virtuous restraint and be like, well, the grace covers me. Folks, I think there should be a demarcation between, or an understanding of hard work and excellent work and reward. God is still a reward of those who diligently seek him. So I think the part where you have to diligently do something, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good work, or see it that a man who is diligent in his business, he will stand before kings, not before men. So I think there should be a balance between hard work and grace, because the truth actually is God puts grace on something that you've actually put in work. In a common phrase that we use in Africa, he says, God butters your bread. And that's like saying, all right, you're going to put in the work, but God puts in, his finger is on it, and that gives it the bonus and the flourishing you need. Another quote that is commonly used is that, how many of you probably play games with dice? You have to roll dice. So someone said that, we roll the dice, but God gives double six. It sounds better in pidgin English, but that just gives an idea of, oh boy, you got to put in the work. So far I've had those experiences with failing and having to get back up, but this is where it got really interesting. In my 4th year, at the time, I was the only student with a first class. All right, so I was already actually confident that I'm getting out as the best graduating student. I was confident. So my final semester, project and all of that. Unfortunately, I had on the most important course, which is my project defense, I had a B. It was a 6-unit course, and that was devastating to me because a B in a 6-credit-hour course was going to be a massive drop for me. I was already anxious about whether I was going to be the best graduating student or even a first class. And guess what? At the end of it all, I wasn't the best graduating student. I remember telling my friend of how pained I was. Now I'm going to give shout out to the best graduating student, Enikike. I was like, how but I have to remember that, okay, you're not the best graduating student, but you are at least 1 out of 2 of the guys that had a first class. So I still graduated in the first class, and it was tough for me to deal with that because I counted it as failing, I didn't get it, that kind of stuff. But I think that when you understand that, first of all, other people put in more work. you got the reward for what you did. So secondly, you're not God is not a respecter of man. Exactly, right? I know sometimes people get favor for God, I'm like God. People say I'm God's special son and favorite son. which is good. God can be jealous for, passionate or zealous for people, especially when they are faithful in stuff. God can break protocols. But at the common ground, we should know that God is not a respecter of man. All right, so he's not going to favor one person that doesn't do nothing or doesn't, and then the other person who did the actual work is probably going to get nothing. No. So having to separate that mentality would actually help us better to put in the work and stuff. So now on the good side, everyone is running a different race in life, and while I wasn't the best graduating student, I still get to do other stuff that are not even related to my results. All right, so that is not the end. That's not the end of life. That is not the entirety of my life. It's not my academics. And I sometimes think that it's because of the pride in our heart that we try to strive for something, and then we feel bad when we don't get it, because now we can't boast about how we are the best guy. Now, I'm not talking down on being the best in everything, but I'm also putting a balance to maybe the reason why you're having a problem dealing with the fact that you were not the best is because you actually wanted to boast in that thing. All right, so I'm just saying, so it's something we must put a heart check every time we are trying to, or checks and balance every time we're trying to do something, just to be sure, hey, am I doing it for myself? Am I doing it to get the glory, or to, or for God? All right, so that was that about that. And now coming to failing my driver's license. This was actually something I didn't think I was going to experience, and I know why. I think I put so much confidence in my flesh in my ability to do stuff. For some reason, some part of me always think that I'm going to be always good at everything, even when I don't put in as much work as people. I think it's a mentality I need to crush down and build up a mentality that, okay, you are gonna get the reward when you put in the work. So in the United States, you have to write a written test to get your temporary license, and then you have to do the road driving test and maneuverability test for you to get a permanent license. So I did the first one and I passed. I got my temporary license, and after a couple of months, I needed to do my permanent driver's license. I had practiced the maneuverability test, and I did more practice for the maneuverability test than I did for the road test, because I didn't have a car of my own at the time, right? So I went to the BMV and I actually passed the maneuverability test. I was feeling good about it, and this is the thing. It takes a lot of practice, but I thought, oh well, I've been driving for a while. I probably don't need as much practice as I do for the other tests. So I didn't put in enough work for the road test. My first trial, I passed the maneuverability test. That's a tongue twister actually. I passed the first test. I'm gonna call it M test. I passed the M test, and then it was time to go for the road test. And I was going, and I got on the road, and that was when I realized that, oh boy, when faced with exams and tests and trials, that's when you're going to see how prepared or not prepared you are for stuff. So that really just showed and revealed my unpreparedness. So I went with the confidence of my flesh, thinking that, well, how many of you have actually thought, well, because you drive a whole lot, you are in your mind, you can drive and you can do all of the. I was like that. I am sometimes like that. I imagine myself doing things. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be so good in this thing. I'm gonna be so good in this thing. Bro, I failed the test. So I failed the first test, and I was like, wow, I failed it. But this is the thing. They call it demerit, and I think it gives an interesting perspective, and it teaches you like, okay, you're not a failure, you just got a couple of demerits, and then those demerits added up to a point where you actually didn't pass the test. So maybe if you take that as a perspective, that could console you, like, well, I didn't fail the test, I just had a couple of demerits, I need to try better, that kind of stuff. But on the second, Now I think every time we fail at something, the logical thing is to go back to the drawing board, review the comments, and then practice on those things. So that was what I did, right? When it was time for me to take my second, because it took me, actually I didn't take the second test after a couple of months, because I was like, you know what, I'm not just ready. I mean, I don't have a car, so I'm not just ready to do this. It was when it was getting to, my temporary license was going to get expired. I was like, okay, I need to get this done. And I had a couple of people ask me like, okay, have you done this and all of that? So second time I had my roommates, I practiced with my roommate's car. I think the second time, what happened? I'm not sure I did a lot of practice as I should have. I did practice in the car park. I was practicing my turns, because I had a lot of demerits on wide turns and all of that, right turns and left turns. You know, I was good at other things like maybe signaling and doing the shoulder checks and all of that. So I practiced in the car park, and I went for it again, and then realizing, and then I failed again. Then I realized that, okay, I didn't practice as I ought to. You know, I can't just practice a day before or 2 days before or the week of my test and expect to have learned or have the muscle memory for what I'm going for. So I think it just revealed, how unserious I was about it, or not as committed to getting the license, or maybe I just thought, well, I'm just gonna get it. You know, success is not just gonna jump on you because you are good at other things. You know, sometimes we fail at stuff because we don't put in as much work, and sometimes we fail at stuff because we're not just good at it. Some people are natural at stuff, some people are not, they have to put in the work, and so it takes skill to drive, you know, that kind of stuff. I remember on the morning of my tests, after I had, you know, done a couple of, you know, practice the day before, I just sat on the chair and I was meditating on everything I had practiced. I was meditating and picturing myself doing the wide turns and stopping at the stop sign and signaling and doing the shoulder checks. And I think it helped, because as I meditated through every possible move during the test, I found myself being conscious of the move, and it was like I was aware of what I was doing, and I was so happy with how it was going. But guess what? I failed the third time, and it was painful but not surprising, because I remember during the practice, while I was practicing my wide turns in the car park, a couple of times I wasn't stopping completely at the stop sign. I was like, you know what, I'm just practicing. I mean, in the real stuff, I'm going to stop at stop sign. and then I realized, like, it's actually what you do, you know, when you're preparing for something that you would find yourself doing in the real scenario, in the real life events. So I had the test go so smoothly, and the one thing that messed it up was because I didn't come to a complete stop at the stop sign. I was so mad at myself. I was like, it was going well, but then guess what? I had done the first time, the second time, and then the third time. One thing that kept coming to mind was I listened to a sermon by Apostle Emmanuel, and I think it was about brave faith, something like that. Or can't remember, but there was this sermon about how you know, Jacob dug a well, and then they covered it up, and he dug another well, and they covered it up, and he dug another well, and then it was just teaching like go back. You know, I was telling a friend, like, you know, I'm just gonna do it again. Like, yeah, if I don't do it, then I've messed up. All right, I'm only going to get this license if I keep going back, you know, and getting at it. In Pidgin, they will say, "Now who give up, mess up." You know, so basically, it's the person that gives up that has actually messed up. So I was like, I'm just gonna do it the fourth time, and then the fourth time, I rehearsed every move again, and then I thought about the things. I prayed over it. I thought about the things that I was going to do. I was going to stop at my stop sign. I was going to signal and all of that. And then that morning I went to with my roommate, and then he took me there, and then it was going so well. I had a couple of mistakes, but they were not massive demerits. And at the end of the driver's license, it was such a bliss for me to hear that you passed the test. I was like, wow. I didn't think something like this was going to be a big deal for me, but it was so profound to me that I had a whole lot of things to learn about that. And I think the biggest of it all is that you would do well at things that you practice and put in the work. It doesn't matter how little the effort is, as long as you do it over and over and over, like building atomic habits. So that's it. Have you ever failed at something? Have you ever struggled learning something, and after a couple of months, a couple of weeks, a couple of years, you suddenly became a natural at it? I bet it took a lot of work and discipline. So yeah, this is my story. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It's been fun talking to you guys. If you have not yet subscribed, honestly, let thunder not fire you. I'm joking. I'm not actually. Subscribe right now. Anyway, yeah, thank you guys for sticking around. It's your boy Lumi. See you around next time. Bye.